Hi guys.
Hey guys!
Rena!
Caroline! Hi Teddy!
Let's do a shot after us.
Okay, everyone get in. 3, 2, 1.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
I've never done this over Zoom. Obviously, we're not physically together, but there's no reason why spirit can't communicate over the internet.
Nothing's gonna happen.
Visualize us sitting in a circle. Spirit, we invite you to use us to pass on any communication. Is there anyone there? Please come forth.
What was that? Amy, was that you?
I heard it.
I heard something.
I think there's something here.
Do you see that? Oh,
Emma,
no.
how funny.
There's something.
Yeah, we've connected with something. We gotta keep going. We gotta talk to it.
This is not good. I told you not to disrespect the spirits. It could be something demonic.
Hey, this is all your fault! Not my fault! This is your fault!
Emma, turn the filters off. Come on.
Hello and welcome to this BFI At Home event. My name is Bogutskaya and I'm so excited and only mildly terrified to be joined by the creative minds behind Host, the horror film that was shot during lockdown and that people are already calling the most defining horror film of 2020. So we're going to start with the director and writers of Host for the first part of this Q&A, and we'll be later joined by the wider team to go into more detail about how it was made. So I'm joined now by the director, executive producer, and writer Rob Savage, the writer and executive producer Jed Shepard, and the writer Gemma Hurley. Thank you so much, guys, for making the time, for joining me, and also for literally giving me so many nightmares that I'm kind of mad at you.
That makes me so happy.
So I have a million questions, and we put out the call as well on Twitter for people to send questions in. So we've got a couple questions coming in from the audience from Twitter as well that I'll keep for the end. But just to start back at the beginning, can you talk a little bit about the origin of the story and how it all came together so quickly?
Yeah, well, it actually started with a prank video that I played on my friends before lockdown even started. I just moved into this new apartment and genuinely I was hearing like really creepy noises from my attic. I was hearing like footsteps above my room when I was trying to go to sleep and things like that. And so I got all my friends onto a Zoom call. This is during lockdown. You know, lockdown happened. I was like, fuck, I might be locked down with an axe murderer living in my attic. So I got all my friends on a Zoom call. I got them to record just in case I do die. Then they could release that as a horror movie. And I took them up into my attic. And as I was pointing the camera up into the dark, a zombie child jumps out and eats my face. And it was all a prank that I'd set up where I'd kind of like found a sneaky way to stop filming on the Zoom and start filming my laptop screen. And I just played them back at a scene from this movie Wreck, this Spanish horror movie that's all found footage. And we put that online and it ended up kind of blowing up. It went crazy viral. We got like 7 million views and it was being shared all over the place. And, you know, from there we started getting all these calls in being like, well, can you do something longer with this format? You know, I think there's kind of shooting something on Zoom, it kind of has legs. And it's the only thing that we can film right now. This was right at the peak of lockdown. And so I called Jed up and, you know, we started throwing ideas around to see if we could come up with something. Jed, do you want to tell them what you text me?
So again, like in my mind, this is just a silly prank video. It doesn't even make sense that it kind of went viral. So when Rob said there was interest in making a longer version, I was instantly like, I'm up for it, but how? What can we do? So I said, leave it with me. And I'm at my usual stage at 4:30 in the morning, just at a loss of what to do. And then it just came to me. So I text Rob 2 words, Zoom Seance. And I fell asleep almost instantly. Like that was my day's work done. I woke up to Rob just being, yes, let's do this. And that's pretty much what he pitched to Shudder.
Yeah. And we actually, you know, we actually had, even though we only had 2 words, and basically that was the pitch. It was Zoom Seance, We don't know what happens after that. It will probably be scary. You've just got to trust us. And we pitched that around to a bunch of places. And there was like this huge bidding war for it because everyone was dying for content and the video was getting more and more views. And Shudder were the only ones really who kind of clicked with how we wanted to do it. The fact that we wanted to get this out fast, the fact that we wanted this to be a film made during lockdown, about people in lockdown, that people could watch in lockdown. You know, we had a lot of big places kind of bidding on it, but they were saying like, yeah, we'll get this out really fast. We're thinking like 6, 7, 8 months we'll get it out. It's like, no. This needs to be out in like a matter of weeks. And Shudder, you know, to their credit, totally got on board, totally supported us. Were totally hands off and let us just do our thing and figure it out as we went along.
And can you elaborate a little bit about why did you feel the need, the urgency to put it out so quickly?
I think because as a horror filmmaker, the thing you're always looking for is an idea that people are going to take home with them. That, you know, when they're turning off their light in their bedroom, they're still thinking about the movie and they're checking all the dark corners of their room. And we had this amazing opportunity that everyone was literally housebound, and using this means of communication that we're all so familiar with now. And it felt like if we could tap into that, and if we could make people feel unsafe in their own homes when they're logging into their Zoom call, then we could really be onto something. And we needed that to happen while that was still our current reality, and things were changing day by day, and kind of, you know, we didn't know how long it would be relevant. And, you know, even to the point of the film was written, executed, everything happened in lockdown. But by the time we released it, at least here in the UK, lockdown had eased a little bit. So there was there are even some jokes in Host, which was conceived, written, edited. The whole thing was 12 weeks. And even in that 12-week period, things changed enough that, for instance, Teddy breaking lockdown wasn't really relevant anymore. So it was, you know, we were very aware of things changing.
Mm-hmm. And what about you've spoken a little bit about the pitching process and the bidding war of getting the film financed and made, but yeah, I'm wondering how do you convince people in the middle of lockdown to make this with you, to go on this journey with you? So what was the convincing or the pitch process like? Not to Shudder or to streaming services, but to the team. How did you get people on board?
We recorded most of this, by the way. Yeah. So the entire process, the entire way from inception till the end, it's all recorded and it's going to be the most amazing behind the scenes kind of journey film ever.
Yeah.
Go on, Rob.
But we basically, everyone who you see in the prank video, and I hope we can maybe put a little link in this video, every single person in the prank video worked on this movie. You know, I'm just a boring fucker, so I only hang out with people who I work with anyway. And I'd worked with a lot of these cast before. They were on the call for the prank video, and it only seemed fair after scaring the shit out of them that we asked them to come back for the feature film. So it was literally the easiest casting process in the world. We were already doing these kind of like Zoom happy hours and quizzes and all the stuff that everyone's been doing. We were doing that with the cast and crew of Host. So it was literally as simple as we just started recording our Zoom hangouts and decided to put our energy into making a movie. And I think everyone was, I just think everyone had that frustrated creative energy. So everyone jumped at it.
Yeah, we had a WhatsApp group at the start of lockdown called the Quarantine Movie Club. And we would just watch, from the start of lockdown, we would watch terrible movies on Netflix until there were no terrible movies left. And then, yeah.
We watched, we got to Waterworld and we knew that we'd like hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we watched Waterworld, someone suggested we watch Waterworld again the next day. And then I think that was time to pivot to making a movie.
Yeah. That's when you know.
I think Kevin Costner would be so proud of that influence. Jed and Gemma, I'd love to bring you guys in a little bit more as well to talk really about the core concept of the film, which is so fantastically simple, just Zoom seance.
Yeah. So
can you talk a little bit about what did you think kind of was the most terrifying potential of this very simple premise?
So me and Rob basically got together like we usually do, and we just fire off cool ways to kill our friends on film. I must stress, on film. And we knew it was going to be on Zoom, so we essentially just went down the Zoom features list and was like, oh, it can do that, it can do that, it can do that, and almost like assigning a death to each Zoom feature. And there's a few things that we like after the prank video, we were going to set ourselves on fire and make that go viral. We were so desperate to chase that high. So I'm glad we didn't.
Oh my God.
So I'm glad that we managed to put that into host, so we don't have to set ourselves on fire. So we basically constructed all of our favorite kind of or most wanted scares and scenes we wanted, and we knew it was a Zoom seance we wanted to do, and we knew we wanted to use our friends. But the problem with using your friends is we're so close to them, we can't be unbiased. We can't kind of like use probably their best attributes, because we have our own personal relationships with each of these friends. So that's where we brought Gemma in, because as an outsider who wasn't part of the initial friend group, though she is very much part of the friend group now, she brought an outside view that was just necessary and ultimately made the film better than it could ever be.
Yes, so I feel like I kind of came on, maybe it sounds like I came on after you guys decided not to set yourselves on fire, kind of in that kind of gap, that sweet spot. Because I'd met Rob like once, like a year ago before lockdown had happened, and not met any of the others. And yeah, as Jed and Rob said, they had like this amazing prank video, this amazing, really creative list of all these like scares that they wanted to do using Zoom technology, but also these kind of homage kind of scares to like their favorite like movies from forever. And so we had that, and it was like, how do we make a film out of this? Like go, and you've got 2 weeks. So it was kind of like that wonderful challenge of like, okay, we've got this sandbox of all these amazing things. How can we, how can we make people care about these characters? How is this more than just a bunch of scares? How is this, how can we build a relationship dynamic? What is this really all about? And I guess it was from there, like the three of us, we kind of just met up on Zoom, created a Google Doc, and just kind of batted some ideas around of what the potential characters could be based on the actresses they already had in mind. And a lot of our own kind of experiences of lockdown and being on Zoom kind of fed into that as well. So it was quite a personal project, which I think is why in the end, perhaps it kind of resonates. I mean, Rob mentioned that, we wanted to make the film to come out in lockdown. So it resonates with people already in lockdown, but I think it kind of transcends that as well. And it does feel like quite a personal film, because we do recognize ourselves in those characters and in that situation.
Yeah.
And Gemma, if I can stay with you for a second, can you talk a little bit more about this collaborative process? Because it's three of you guys kind of writing this script in this really intense and quite tight circumstances. So how did you work on building those character dynamics that you established so quickly in the film? Within like the first 10 minutes, we already have a really strong sense of the relationship that exists between all of these characters.
Thank you, first of all. I guess that's a really interesting question, because this is such an unusual process. Like I've never made a film in this kind of way before, and maybe this will become the new norm. Who knows? I kind of hope not, but it was like so much fun as well. Obviously, like I'd only met Rob once, I'd never met Jed, so there was a kind of element of like we haven't had enough chance to, necessarily like build up that trust that you might have with writers that and I was so, I had my anxieties going into that, like, are we all gonna like gel? Like they've got their own particular dynamic. How are we gonna create something that we all love and like, are on the same page for? But thank God that wasn't a problem. It was just like I think we all kind of immediately was like, okay, it's kind of, this is the kind of tone we want. We watch loads of reference films for that kind of like, I want to know what feeling I want this film to be, and that was our kind of guiding star. Like, so like, Ghost Watch and Paranormal Activity 3 and all that, those kind of like quite joyful, fun things was where we started with. And then I suppose it was a matter of like, they already had really clear ideas about what these characters were based on the actresses. And, because obviously originally it was going to be like a 30 to 40 minute film. We knew that we didn't have time to, have exposition of these characters' backstories. Like you had to get to know them in the moment by their choices they made and their kind of dynamic. And that was kind of quite a blessing, really, because I think it makes you feel quite present. You're just kind of with them. You don't need to know who they were before this moment. You kind of just understand. And that was, I guess that's kind of one of the decisions we made early on.
Mm. I think what's amazing though is before Gemma met any of the cast, because we sent through our kind of wish list of scares, and we were like, can you help us make a movie out of this, because we're stuck. And Gemma came in and kind of did this structure proposal, but also she went through and did these little kind of character, like a paragraph for each character before she'd met any of the girls. And it's amazing how they kind of like lined up, like the idea of a character having a boyfriend that she's moved in with too fast. That was something that Gemma came up with before she'd met any of the girls, like Caroline shielding with her dad. It just this weird kind of serendipity of it was bizarre. And actually the first time I think that Gemma ever met the girls was when we did a real life seance with them on Zoom. That was part of our research for this. I got a medium friend of mine came onto the Zoom call, and we all lit our candles and we all summoned spirits together just to see how the girls would react. And literally Gemma was there the whole time with her notepad being like, okay, well, that's interesting. And so much of what's in the movie in that first half genuinely happened in this real seance.
It's almost exactly the same. Like for instance, in the real seance, something happened to Gemma where she felt like something was touching her, and then something flew off her bookshelf, and then she started kind of hyperventilating and crying. And like me and Rob knew this was just absolute gold, especially for like behind the scenes stuff. This will sell a few DVDs. And then we basically used that template, or potentially, because I wasn't sure Gemma actually, I thought she might have rigged it in the real. I was like,
she probably did, to be fair.
Wire. Yeah. So we used that element of Gemma potentially making a scene in a seance to just so it would reflect real life and what really happened during that real seance.
And the medium got cut off, and we had to get the medium on the phone, and we had to shut down the seance remotely, which we probably fucked up. It's probably still open.
And I wanted to kind of go back a little bit to horror and how this taps into quite a lot of really established traditions and within genre and within subgenres of horror. You know, we've got found footage, we've got kind of the paranormal, summoning of spirits. So I wanted to ask you all, kind of as all, horror nerds, as we all are here on the Zoom, what were some of what did you want to add or bring to the genre that you thought you wanted to achieve with Host?
Well, what I wanted, like from the start, is to obviously pay homage to what's come before in found footage, but to subvert it. And I wanted people to go into it with a certain type of expectations, maybe thinking this is going to be like Unfriended, but we subvert that like pretty much straight away. And also, I just wanted people to see that we're British and we can do this type of thing too. The last good British found footage movie was Ghostwatch, and it's been a long time. So
the Borderlands deserves a mention.
Borderlands is great, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I certainly wasn't thinking in any we had no idea this movie would kind of tap into something in the way that it has. So I didn't really have any kind of high ambitions for it. I mean, I think we all decided that we kind of wanted to do something that was very current, but also very classic, which is why the seance worked so well, is that we were kind of using these tried and true tropes, but subverting them through making it very lockdown specific, very, very of the moment. And I think, it gets a lot of comparison to movies like Unfriended, and we love Unfriended, but I think I wanted this movie to feel much more grounded and much more visceral and much less. I didn't want all the distractions that those other screen life movies have, and I suppose this is getting more into direction, but I think the real time element was something we really wanted to feel in this. That idea of even down to like the countdown happening at the end as Zoom cuts you off your free call. Like we wanted time to be a factor in this, and for it to really feel like moment to moment it was unfolding in the most authentic way in front of you.
Yeah, we had that right from the start as well. The fact, like we joked, wouldn't it be funny if it cut off in 40 minutes, like a free Zoom call? Because Haley's too cheap to upgrade.
Yes, update to Zoom and demons won't kill you, basically.
Yeah, that's it.
Or at least we'll catch it on camera if they do.
Yeah.
It's the biggest advert for Zoom ever.
truly is.
For me, I think like my partner absolutely hates horror films. He's like, why would you want to watch them? It's like people having a bad time for like an hour or two. So I guess in my head, I was like, how do I want to feel right now? Like I feel awful. The world is awful. What do I want to feel from horror films? And, you know, there's loads of amazing horror films that make you feel quite claustrophobic and horrid and leaves this kind of weird taste in your mouth afterwards. And I didn't necessarily want to feel like that from this. I wanted to create something, I wanted to be part of creating something that gave you a bit of joy, like you're on a roller coaster and it leaves you like sweaty and you have adrenaline and you like really enjoy the characters in it. They're not just like assholes who deserve to die. They are you, they're your friends. And yeah, by the end of it, like, you know, especially if you watch it in a group of people, we've been seeing all these comments online of people saying they actually found it quite cathartic and fun. And for me, that's like my favorite thing about this whole process.
Yeah. And like one of the main things as well, why we wanted to make this is we wanted to do something with our friends. We've subjected them to our short films for the last 5-6 years. Like we've finally done something a bit more long form with them, which was great. And I want to be able to look back on this crazy time and if someone asks me what did I do, just send them a link to Shudder and say that's what I do with my friends. And again, we didn't think it would be what it is, so we just thought it would be a nice little kind of souvenir of the time, but it's turned into a lot more than that.
Honestly, even if the film had turned out awful and Shudder had said there's no way we're releasing this, it would have been totally worth every single second because it was a blast to make.
I mean, and it's also an incredible blast to watch, just, you know, a lot at 9 a.m. But I wanted to ask you kind of, especially, you know, about the kind of the tension building of the film. And it was really interesting to rewatch it because I almost expected that tension to have dissipated because I already knew what was coming. I knew the beats that were, you know, the scares when they were going to come in, but it was still there. So I think that's a masterful kind of example of writing, really. So I wanted to ask all of you really, what was the most important elements for you in not just building, but maintaining that tension throughout the film?
For me, I mean, we're all like students of horror essentially, and we all kind of study the anatomy of a scare. Like we kind of know how the mechanics work. So I think in order to achieve what we've done, you have to foreshadow and you have to earn the scare. You can't just have a loud sound and think that that'll do for a scare. And I was very adamant that we not have that, and I was very adamant that we wouldn't have any fake glitches and stuff like that as well, because that's the sure sign of a bad found footage movie. Yeah, so I think the foreshadowing that we put into place right at the start, and I think Gemma was quite instrumental in that as well, making sure the characters were likable, believable, and we also gave a nod to what happened later on. So it really feels earned when you see these characters that you absolutely love go through these horrible situations and eventually die. Or did they? Question mark.
I was just going to say, I think it was quite interesting structuring this film because, you know, as I mentioned, we had like a Google Doc where we were, you know, passing it around between us, doing passes, commenting on it. And kind of quite quickly in the process, we kind of came to a structure where we had, you know, like a 3-act structure with the intro and the seance and then the haunting section. And then finally at the end, we've got this like wonderful freak out where everything just goes nuts. And it really is just you're like falling through space or whatever, just scare after scare after scare. And by that point, like, unless I feel, you know, it's like there's a theme park ride called Oblivion in the UK where it's like, and that's kind of, I think, what we kind of structured it around, the feeling of that ride.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, I think what's really important is you provide the framework by which people watch your movie. So people go into this movie, they know it was shot during lockdown, they know it's set on Zoom, they expect a certain level of scare, they expect a certain level of what we're able to deliver, and we knew we wanted to kind of go well beyond that. But it was really important to us that we were kind of making the audience feel like they didn't have a roadmap for where this was going. You know, we were slowly amping up the scares, and then very quickly at the end we start to kind of throw more kind of bombastic scares at them, we throw more stunts at them, and I think the audience almost knows, they've almost kind of clicked with how to watch the movie by that point. They know the things to look out for. It's like if you're watching you know, a Paranormal Activity movie, you know to focus in on, did that door just move? You know, these very little micro scares. And I think, you know, the idea was that we make people think it's that kind of movie. They're leaning in, did that just move? Did I see something in the shadows? And then we just throw all this crazy shit in their face. And it, you know, I think I love it when I'm watching a movie and I have absolutely no idea where it's going to go, or and it feels kind of dangerous to watch it. It feels like nothing is nothing is as
Safe.
you expect. Yeah, safe, exactly.
The thing that writing can't do, I know this is about writing, but the thing that writing can't do, that directing can, is have a locked off screen with an empty door in the background, because the audience knows to look at that space, because the absence of seeing anything is far more scarier than actually seeing something, because if you're seeing a shape, then you could potentially fight it or run away from it. But if you're seeing nothing, it's you against the void, and you'll never win against the void.
That's I mean, that's the story of my life, but also but also just a wonderfully totally unscripted segue into my next question, which is, can you talk about your decision of making the demon / spirit being visible and kind of increasingly visible as the film progresses?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things we did right at the start of the writing process, we wrote a list of just cool people who we knew could help out with the movie. There was this kind of light bulb moment when we realized that, shooting remotely, even though it has its drawbacks, actually what that means is anyone with an internet connection could be a part of our movie. So we wrote down, pyrotechnics people we knew could blow shit up for us. We had stunt people who were quarantining, with everyone you need to pull off these crazy stunts. And one of the people that was on our list was this amazing actor, James Swanton, who's played demonic characters for us before, and just has in our short film Salt, and he's just got this amazing physicality and sorry, James, he's just got a very scary face. And it was one of those things about setting the framework by which the audience watches the movie. They think that the foe is invisible, and they're looking out for signs of it influencing the space. And then suddenly, in the scene with Teddy, you get your first hit of seeing the demon full and proper. And it just felt like at that point in the movie we needed an escalation, and also we kind of liked this idea that the demon was getting closer and closer as the film went on, and the demon kind of changes, towards the end. We always saw this as being a movie about a tulpa, and a tulpa is a kind of demon which is summoned by groupthink. So Gemma, when she makes up her story about Jack, she puts this picture in everyone's heads, and their kind of collective fear creates this image of Jack. So we always saw the demon as almost using the likeness of Jack to kind of mock and toy with the characters as they were killed off, and
like a mask,
like a mask, which is the analogy we use. And then towards the end, that very last shot, you see that the demon is kind of coming through the facade of Jack, and it's kind of transforming into something that we don't quite see because the Zoom call is cut off. So that was kind of our underlying set of rules, which we didn't really feel we needed to go into detail in the movie, but we kind of understood that was what we were going for.
Great. And I have a couple of questions that have come in from Twitter for you guys that are quite specific. So I'm going to throw these out at you. So @Philoween_Thrills, excellent handle, asks, has anyone that the cast or crew admires reached out to congratulate them on their work, celebrity, filmmaker, or otherwise?
Loads. So we just had Sean Baker, who we all love, who's an amazing director. We've had Mick Garris, the director, Joe Hill. Obviously, Stephen Volk, the writer of Ghostwatch, has said that this is the new Ghostwatch. So basically, I can jump off a cliff now. I'm fine.
Yeah. Done.
like Midsommar.
Yeah. It'd be worth it. Who else? Ariana Grande's brother last night, which
that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
My favorite one is still Elijah Wood. So
Oh, Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it that the answer to this question is so long that you've like, I don't know, like how many, who hasn't?
A cool one was Paul Tremblay, who's an amazing horror author. And I got to Zoom with him a few days ago as well, just because he's a fan of Host. And he got to quiz me about Host, and I got to quiz him about A Head Full of Ghosts, which is my favorite horror book. So that was a cool thing to do.
Excellent.
Can I use this? I'll use this as a Jed and Gemma. You don't know this, but I got an email. the other day that Stephen King watched it and loved it.
Oh wow!
No.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I don't know
What
if
did
he's.
he say?
I don't know if he's going to tweet about it, but like I sent it through. I got my agents to send it through to his people, and yeah, he watched it and loved, all capitals, loved it.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Just to wrap up, I wanted to ask you, what have you learned from the making of Host that you'll bring onto your next projects?
I don't mind going first. I was wrong about a couple of things in the writing process, which has been really fun to experience. So I think I had some ideas about like how things should be structured, or like the rules of horror. And I think this film breaks a lot of rules that people might have in their mind about, like, for instance, like how many times can you see the monster and it, and it still be scary? Like, I was like, oh, I don't know, do we need to like pull back on this as much as possible? But I'm so glad I was wrong. I'm so glad like Rob just did it anyway, because it's just fun. And also just like, the kind of structure of it, it does take a really long time for anything to really happen. That first act of the film is quite, it's top heavy really. And usually I'll be like, oh, I don't know, we need to kind of get going now. But without that, you just wouldn't get a chance to see how charming like those characters are. And I think that's what makes people enjoy the film as well.
Yeah. For me, what I've learned is that my friends are really cool and they're really talented. And the main thing that I want to get out of all of this is to show the world how good these actors are. And because we've made them suffer in our short films for years, finally they're getting the recognition that they deserve and on a big stage. And they're the most talked about actors around at the moment, which is so cool. And I hope it leads to more things for them. So I've learned that how great my friends are. If that's a cheesy cop out, then so be it.
No, I'll follow on from that. I mean, and this sounds super cheesy, but like the big takeaway is collaboration. It's, the idea that's kind of been propagated of there's one person whose film this is it's always been bullshit, but this has just really exposed how bullshitty that is, because everyone was throwing in ideas. Everyone was just the collaboration needed to make a film like this happen is insane, and everyone absolutely bought it. And this is a film that we're all the authors of this movie, and we're all like incredibly proud of it. And I think just inviting that level of collaboration onto whatever I do next, I think that's going to make the work better.
Thank you so much, Rob, Jed, and Gemma, for your amazing insight. And we're now going to go to catch up with the cast and crew to really get into the nitty-gritty of how Host was made.
Caroline, take us up. Go on, Caroline. It's okay.
Nope. Really excited to be joined in this session by director, executive producer, and writer Rob Savage, producer Douglas Cox, editor Brenna Rangott, and actors Haley Bishop and Carolyn Ward. Guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm really
Thanks for having us, Anna.
So to kick off, I wanted to ask kind of to all of you, when the idea and actually the real possibility of making a feature-length horror film or any film in lockdown materialized in front of you, kind of what was your initial reaction? Were you apprehensive? Were you excited? Were you scared?
Excited. Yeah, I think excited and mildly scared when we found out the premise, and we were all like, ooh, Zoom seance. Let's see how this goes. But no, really excited.
Whenever Rob calls me up to talk about a film, there's always a certain degree of apprehension underneath it. If I've learned anything from the last 7 years, it's always that like it's going to be something that really pushes us to the edge of what we can do.
When I got the phone call, I thought it was only Rob Savage that was going to think of a way to do a feature film in the middle of lockdown.
Thanks for answering the call.
And I wanted to kick off kind of really digging into how it was made, really, because that's been one of the most impressive achievements, is that you guys have managed to pull off not just a great film, but any film in these circumstances. So if I can start with you, Douglas, as the producer of the film, this seems on the surface as a kind of very fun nightmare to produce. So what was the biggest challenge for you in pulling it off?
Fun nightmare. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think, I mean, there were so many challenges, big and small. And I think, you know, really like as just a baseline kind of reasoning behind it, like the biggest sort of benefit we had was a really incredible team of people, from the actors to all of our collaborators. And so every time we came up against the challenge, it wasn't a case of like, oh, we can't do that. It was just a case of how do we find a way to make it work. That being said, I mean, this was undeniably the hardest thing I've ever done as a producer. Creating a film at a time when everybody is incredibly conscious of like a deadly disease. You know, there were so many things that, you know, we had to be considerate of and careful of. So kind of making something whilst keeping everybody safe, that was the biggest challenge. And, you know, we're all still here.
I wanted to kind of expand on it a little bit. And one of the kind of the fundamentally really one of the many impressive things about the film is the amount of stunts and special effects that you managed to pull off. So I wanted to kind of really ask all of you, but Rob, if you don't mind kicking off the answer, is how ambitious did you allow yourself to get when thinking up of all of the scenarios?
Well, we knew that on paper doing a horror movie on Zoom just sounded like a really shit idea. So people would be watching it, kind of assuming the worst, assuming that there'd only be a certain level of scare, of stunt that we'd be able to pull off during lockdown. So one of the very first things, and I think, you know, the first conversation I had with Doug is like, I really want to push this as far as it can possibly go. And we had this kind of light bulb moment where we realized that literally anyone with an internet connection could be a part of the film. And we made this big kind of master list of cool people who could help us out. This was before we even had a script. And we had access to amazing, you know, pyrotechnics people who could do prosthetic effects and, you know, stunts. And we started to write that into the script. But one thing that happened, because we were shooting the film chronologically, is we'd have everything planned out. Something would work really well. I don't know, a stunt or something, an effect we did with fishing wire. And then after we wrapped, Doug would immediately get a phone call and I'd be like, well, that worked. Let's try and do something 10 times as big. And so the film really like snowballed. Like the final 20 minutes of the film was never meant to be as mad as that, but things just kept going well. And I kept calling Doug up and Doug kept saying yes. And we ended up doing all this crazy stuff. I mean, the bit at the end where basically Haley's entire kitchen explodes was something that I called up Doug about like the day before, just as an idea. And it was really about like, how can we push this as far as it can possibly go?
I think it's a really interesting point as well, like to follow on from that. It's this idea of treating every kind of possibility as just that, not as a problem, but as an opportunity. And I think it's a real marker for how we approach this film as a whole. It was, you know, we're in a circumstance where there's lots of limitations, but instead of treating them as problems, we looked at them as opportunities. And so finding all these amazing people who were all over the world, locked in their houses, but, you know, had time and had a desire to do something creative. And so all of those initial phone calls were really positive, and it was about finding ways in which everybody could utilize their skills and that we could then combine them together.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the fun of what we got to do, is we were given the freedom, especially for us, I think, as actors. You know, normally you just get told what you're going to be doing and you have to kind of fit into that. But we were really a part of the collaboration to figure out, well, what can we do in our house? What kind of items can we play with? I mean, luckily, my partner has a bag of rope, and that has come in handy, even though I wish he threw that out years ago. Look, you know, who's laughing now? And we were able to come up with something, and the fishing wire and destroying the kitchen for the final shot was just like, yeah, what stuff do we have at our disposal? Because we can't just pop to a shop. We can't just order things from the normal places we would get props and things.
I was actually gonna ask you, Caroline and Haley, kind of about your process of, you know, you're given these scenes, these ideas, and these intensely increasing graphic situations. How did you make that work? And what was your process of essentially creating and navigating all of that production by yourselves I'm assuming you were kind of, you know, in your own houses,
Yeah.
having to produce all of this.
I think for me, it was like the start of it would have been, I think I approached it with like the tech side of it. So like logistically, what is how am I going to be able to move my laptop around, do all of that stuff? So it was the tech side of it first to make sure it was possible. And then anything that seemed like sort of a challenge or anything like that, you'd speak to the team about, and then we'd figure out the best way to do it. And then from that point, after that, it then turned into sort of the character work and the acting side of it. But initially, like, that was the really fun challenge of it, because I don't think anyone's done stuff like this, but because there's never been a worldwide lockdown before. But the initial challenge of it for me was the exciting part of it, because it was new, and I just love, especially the makeup. That was so much fun. When they told me that I was going to be doing that, I was in so much shock, because I love doing sort of, I'm really hands-on as a person anyway. And I've done films before where I've had prosthetics on, but it's always a professional applying them to my face, and I've always sort of fancied it. And then when I got to do it myself, I was over the moon. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think we did doing the stunts in our house. I've never gotten to do a stunt on anything before, because usually that's above my pay grade or my abilities. And so giving the opportunity to be like, okay, you're going to have to learn how to fall and learn how to do all this properly. And I think we got really lucky, was right as lockdown lifted just slightly, where we could have, people in our home to work. We had our stunt coordinators, Nathaniel and Matt, come over, and they were able to rig me up safely. They were able to, do everything with keeping with PPE and safe distances, and teach me how to do this properly, so we could have this amazing effect, and I could get dragged out that door there over and over again. I mean, that was the best day ever. It was like being on a roller coaster, and I'm sure Ducky and Rob were freaked out every time I'd go through the door, being like, oh, I hope she comes back out. But for me, it was just like, woo, let's do it again. Poor Brenna, though, you probably had to just have the hardest job cutting everything together.
It was very fun to watch all of that stuff, because I could see how much fun you guys are all having. Absolutely.
And Brenna, I'd love to bring you in here to hear about your process of editing this, of putting this together, because it is incredibly time, like you know, down to the pop-up of, you've got 10 minutes left. But
yeah, absolutely.
there is a really intense sense of tension and of playing around with reactions and timeliness. So can you talk a little bit about your creative process for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the one thing that we sort of slightly did not in order was that we decided to shoot a lot of set pieces and the scares quite early on in the shoot. So when those rushes started coming in, it felt reasonably simple enough.
Yeah.
So Robin really thought really hard about where we were going to hide some of the cuts, so we could transition between the stunt houses and the actors' houses, and something else. I think there was also James Swanton's house as well. There was like numerous places. So that was
mad, yeah.
Quite well thought out. So in a way that didn't pose masses of difficulty to me, because it had been planned so well. But I think when we started shooting the Zoom meetings, which we did sort of shoot in order, that I guess the challenge for me was to kind of, once I started integrating the scares into the sort of Zoom grid, making sure that the timings were right and the reactions were happening at the right time. It was almost like having to keep up. Well, at its most busy, the Zoom meeting was 7 people, I think, when Salen's there, and it was like it's almost like 7 timelines that you had to keep an eye on and keep each one of those sort of plates spinning in a way, so that and also, like, particularly towards the end of the film, we always Rob and I knew we wanted it to move. We always referred to it as the roller coaster, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was that moment where we wanted to keep the momentum going, so one thing happens after the other. So in a way, I mean, obviously when you're improvising a lot, you have to do a bit of work to kind of condense everything down. So it was about trying to keep each one of those Zoom grids moving while keeping the audience's attention focused enough to know what was coming next. That was kind of the difficulty, and absolutely the kind of the fun in it for me as well, because it was sort of hard to know how to attack it in a way, because I sort of started using the actual Zoom records as a base, but we had all our actors put an iPhone as close to the to the camera of the laptop. So we had that flexibility to kind of manipulate the zoom grid. So it ended up being a very complicated timeline.
it's mad because I guess you don't have, because I found this directing it is like I've got a lot of tricks that I kind of lean on. If something's not quite working, I know that I can shoot it in a certain way, or I can cover it in a certain way that I can cover up any mistakes. And because this was so, you know, performance front and center, it had to, every moment had to sell. And like Bren said, it's almost like you're making seven movies, and every single screen, if somebody decides to focus on them, there had to be. I mean, that's the thing. Like, Brenna showed me her timeline, and I honestly almost had a stroke looking at it. It's like because we were improvising. Like, Haley might have said a line that was fucking great on take 1, and then Caroline on take 4 might have done something we really loved. But then Brenna had to cut that together into a grid to make it look like those were happening concurrently. And
but it gave us so much more flexibility than it would in an ordinary single camera, because you could almost construct the entire frame and get, like you say, the absolute best moments from everybody's performance. But it was about syncing them all up so that they happened at the right times of the scare and everything else like that. So
yeah.
I wanted to dig in a little bit into some of the intricate details of the film that I really, really love about it. And some of it kind of, I guess, originates because of the limitations of the format of a screen or a desktop made film. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the sound and the design of that, and some of the cackles and the cackling and the shuffling and the noises. And can you talk a little bit about that planting of scares and of things that then escalate into these big moments in the film?
Yeah, so I think we wanted to make sure that every single sound felt like it could be something being manipulated within the person's flat. It was a bang or a scrape or something. The kind of noises that when you're falling asleep at night, you hear and you wonder if it's an intruder. You know, we really wanted to edge people out when they were watching it in their own homes. And then towards the end, we started to kind of introduce more conventional horror movie sounds, but we always kind of filtered it through the idea that it was the demon's influence kind of glitching the Zoom call. So it was always kind of distortions and things like that we were using. But one of the interesting things that we did, that Brenna started sending through these assemblies that had conventional score on it, or had kind of risers and stings and all the things that you'd normally use in a horror movie. And we sent that cut through to Callum Sample, our amazing sound designer, with pretty much a horror score on it, which I think was so helpful, because we basically gave that to him and said, we need to feel the way that this music makes us feel, but you can't use music. You've got to use distortion. You've got to use ambience. You've got to use stuff that we can justify within the Zoom call.
And it was interesting talking to Callum about that process as well, because, and I think I could hear the joy he takes in his work when I first started speaking to him about it, and he got really excited, and he was talking about blending the radio mic, clean radio mic audio with the Zoom audio, and creating this sort of textured dialogue, and kind of using the kind of limitations again, like of the circumstances, to find new ways to do things. And it was really, especially at that point, because we were all exhausted after being on Zoom for 14 hours a day for like 2 weeks. And so to hear Callum kind of start bubbling up
energy,
about that,
wasn't he?
Yeah. Each stage when someone new came onto the process, they brought that new energy. And I think for Rob and myself, particularly from the beginning through to the end, like, it really helped give us that lift each time to kind of, keep moving forwards, because, from when we started talking about this to delivery, it was just non-stop for 3 months. So it's much needed.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the kind of the visual misdirection tricks that you've used, that, a lot of it as kind of as a film fan and just kind of a horror nerd as well, there's a lot of familiar setups or familiar kind of almost framing of certain shots. Kind of how did you work within what Zoom allowed you to do to both play with what we're familiar with as audiences and completely subvert that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted this film to be one that if you put this film on 5 years from now, you could still just have a blast watching it, and it didn't need to be lockdown specific, and it didn't need to be Zoom specific. I think we had a few ideas that we wanted to make quite specific to the Zoom format. The looping background in Caroline's one was a gag that we came up with quite early on. But I think, a lot of it was just about working with the cast and figuring out what's scary in their houses. Like literally one of the first things I got these guys to do was do like video tours of their house, and I was like, oh, okay, well, Haley's got a creepy hallway, we'd definitely use that. Caroline's attic is scary as fuck, we've got to put some hanging legs in there. And also just because I think Haley, you watch a few, you've been watching more horror movies. You watch Midsommar, didn't you? But I think a lot of these guys don't really watch horror movies. So we did a kind of screening of Paranormal Activity 3 for everyone on Zoom. And afterwards we kind of did a debrief about and they're all terrified. Like Regina was literally crying by the end of it. And we did a debrief, and we're like, okay, well, this is why you were scared at this moment, because they've set up a frame where, if you look at everyone's Zoom now, like Haley, obviously she's in the position she was in the movie. That's a scary frame right there, because you've got, well, is the door shut?
It's shut right now.
If the door was open, that would be a great frame, because your eyes are always drawn there. Doorways are made for people to stand in them. Brenna's got a kind of good, if the light was off in your bedroom, that'd be a good Zoom frame. Whereas Doug, you're up with your back against a wall, so we kind of
it anymore.
There's something's going to come at you from the side.
So it's all about just finding these kind of lo-fi ways to get people paranoid, to get people searching around the frame. The week before we started filming, I kind of booked off a day with each of the cast, and we went through the lighting setups, and we went through camera angles, and it was like Caroline was saying, we just wanted to get all the technical stuff out the way, so that was almost like a muscle memory by the time we got to the shoot, and these guys could just focus on the performance.
I mean, and how do you, especially considering that you're filming all of this inside your own homes, and Haley literally terrified looking at your laptop.
I love doing this angle now.
I didn't want to mention it before, but no, it's not great for me. But I did want to genuinely ask you guys kind of how, you're shooting within your own homes, you're using your homes for dramatic and horrifying purposes. How do you decompress? How did you kind of decompress when you're surrounded by and completely immersed in the making of this terrifying tale?
Blackout blinds and candles.
It was definitely I think a lot of it, I would go on walks as soon as we were kind of on a break. We were shooting and we had that beautiful weather in end of May. And so I would try and go on walks and just escape the space, because I did use almost my full apartment to shoot in, because we go back into the bedrooms, and I creep around the closets and the bathroom, so everything is now tainted by the film. And so I think just going on walks, but then knowing actually having to be the crew as well as the cast for this, you take a step away from the scariness. So normally, if you're on a set and you would walk onto set as the actor and you're amongst the crazy world, but you didn't help set it up. You didn't help light it. You didn't help do all the other little bits to get it ready. And so I think that helped a lot, to just know that it was me who was doing all the set dressing, and it was my partner who was helping me, with fishing wire, pull things. And it was, we were getting the door to slam or whatnot. So you kind of could take a step back. I mean, there are some moments when I find if my apartment is fully dark that I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go into the kitchen.
That closet
right
with
now.
your ironing board gets me.
Yeah.
Little times when you're like, everything's a little too dark. I better keep some lights on. And maybe I'm subconsciously keeping more lights on than I used to. But I don't know. What do you think, Caroline?
Well, I haven't been in my loft since. I keep putting that off. But yeah, so on set, I would sort of, when we take a break, I'd step outside and go and have a sort of chat with my parents, because bless them, they were kind of banished to the garden for the 2 weeks that I was shooting. So I put tinfoil up on all the windows to sort of block all of the light out, so we could control the states and everything. And the house did feel a bit like a dungeon. So as soon as we'd cut and we'd take a break, I'd go outside, have a chat with them. I'd be sort of covered in blood, and they'd be like, oh, do you want a cup of tea? It was really nice. Sort of their support was so lovely. That was really nice.
So Caroline, you've got one of the most amazing gory death scenes in the film. Can you talk a little bit about your process of just putting all the makeup and prosthetics onto yourself, and then kind of how that affected your performance?
Yeah, because Dan Martin sent over all of the prosthetics that he'd made, and then we had one, I think it's like half an hour or 45-minute tutorial before the shoot day, where he was telling me the basics of how to do it. And then on the day that we were shooting, we'd shoot like sort of one sort of head smashing session, and then we'd all take a break and we'd just be chatting while I'm applying the next, and then I'd be like, oh no, I did this wrong, and then Dan would sort of talk me through it and fix the issue, and then we'd do another session and then apply more. So it was really fun. But the blood that I was using is mainly made of sugar, and because we were having it all in my tea, I was just doing like shots of this like sugar water. So I was really like, I was having so much fun anyway, but then the sugar was definitely getting to me. And then these guys are hilarious. So like, I was just like laughing the whole time. And as soon as we cut, so we'd finished for the day, 10 minutes later, we had a rehearsal with the girls for a walkthrough. So I then had to just like jump in the shower, try and take all of this stuff off my face. And then like came back in and with the girls, and they're all just like, had a nice normal day.
No idea what was going on.
And that's the thing, and they all had to keep it secret from each other because we wanted these moments to really genuinely shock them. So everyone was keeping these little secrets.
Yeah, and I guess just on that note as well, and like, you know, we talked a little earlier about shooting some stuff out of sequence, and the stunt moments at the beginning were the big kind of things and those set pieces that we got, so that Brenna could get her hands on them and piece them together, so that Rob could then play them back in to the cast to get these kind of real reactions of these moments happening. And I think just a special shout out to the Lucky 13 action team who did all the stunts, because, you know, it's quite unusual to front load stunts like that, and it was challenging in a lot of ways. But they were traveling around, and it was the only moments we really kind of had people come into contact with each other or come nearby each other. And so, you know, that was such a complicated process in terms of finding out ways to work with teams of people who were cohabiting together so that they could rig each other up safely, create that distance. And then for Rob and I to sit and just remotely be involved in that was kind of terrifying, more terrifying.
Totally terrifying.
Yeah. We've had a few questions come in from Twitter, from audiences, so I'm going to fire them off at you guys. Nicola Richards wants to know why Haley was so insistent on a seance when the others clearly weren't that keen. Parenthesis, prequel, please.
I mean, she's done it before. She thought it would be a really fun activity for her friends. I don't know why everyone thinks she had malicious intent here. It's not like she was looking too creepy in the beginning and stressed out. I mean, who knows? Maybe she was trying to talk to somebody.
Well, please. And another question is from James Aaron Thomas, which is, how did you pull off the flower sequence?
Well, that's actually one of the kind of clever trick edits that we did. Like, so that sequence in Emma's house, her house is actually made up of 5 different locations in that scene. So her bedroom is her bedroom. Then she comes downstairs and we do a hidden edit into my kitchen with me dressed in bunny slippers and the tracksuit being Emma, which is why her hands suddenly get like way fatter, like whenever they're on camera. And we did that because I knew I wanted this moment with the flower footsteps. It was one of the early ideas we had, but it's quite a technical thing to set up and get all the VFX plates that are needed to piece it together. So it was really simple. Basically, I put the camera onto a little tripod and I walked it in so it was handheld, and I very gently put it down so the camera was locked off. And a locked off still shot is much easier to work with in VFX. Then I took the bunny slippers off and I tiptoed around and I stepped into the flower. Then I very gently picked up the camera again and ran backwards, and our VFX team was able to make those footsteps materialize and blend together the 2 clean static plates that we got. So it was quite lo-fi, but it was one of those effects that that we wanted to have, that kind of, how the fuck do they do that effect?
Yeah. Amazing. And a final question from Twitter, from Joey Slither, is how long did production take? Seeing as how they were dealing with the quarantine, I knew it was quick, but I'm just wondering how fast.
I mean, we took I think it was about 2 weeks, Rob, right? You and Gemma and
2
Jed
weeks.
working on the scriptment. And then we also, in that time, were testing and planning. Me and Brenna were chatting about how to get the devices working, how to make sure that we didn't lose footage, all this kind of stuff. Priming all the cast.
Which we did from time to time.
That's
all right.
And then and like just getting everything prepped, really. So that all kind of overlapped, really. And then we moved into production. We shot 4 days of stunts and then a day of Caroline smashing her head against the computer.
Best day ever.
and then we moved on to filming the kind of the main bulk of it with everybody on the call, and that was, I think, about another week of filming.
About 5 days, yeah.
About 5 days, yeah. And then there were various little pickups, but from there we moved right into the edit, and that edit post-production period was I think
long.
A couple of months.
Yeah. Well, we wanted it to be a lot shorter, but it sort of presented challenges that
I think
we didn't quite see.
Yeah, and still, I think if we had an extra week, there's so many.
I know.
Yeah,
I guess that's always
Doug,
I need more time. I need another week, maybe another 2 weeks. And it was just, get it out.
Yeah, the thing that I think is most like impressive, and I say this without kind of any hint of ego or anything, but really just to kind of put in perspective the graft that every individual put into this film is, so much of this was just done for the first time. It was figuring out ways to capture stuff on film that were like, you would never have considered before. We didn't have lighting, we didn't have camera, we didn't have all of this stuff that we're so used to working on these big film sets. And so taking that experience of knowing what we need versus the experience we've all shared of making shorts and finding kind of creative ways to deal with things and slamming them together to create something on this scale. That was the real challenge, and something that, like Rob mentioned earlier, was done by everybody kind of pooling resources and making this film the way it was made. So that was the big challenge, and I think I hope you guys enjoyed it. We certainly did.
Yeah.
And I've just got one final question for all of you, really, to wrap up this conversation, and it's, what have you learned from the making of Host that you think you'll bring onto your future projects?
For me, I absolutely trust and faith in the people you're working with. It's something that this industry, behind the scenes can lack sometimes, and I think it's changing, but there's lots more room to do so. And I think this film is a perfect evidence of how a success can be born from putting faith and trust in the people that you're working with. It's a really reciprocal thing, and I feel very, very grateful to have had that opportunity and that experience with all these guys.
I think just as an actor, this is the first time I've gotten to have to cry and scream and do all these very intense emotions. So that was quite fun and cool, and something to just take in, to have that trust and that belief in yourself. But then also the same thing what Dougie was saying, just knowing that as a collaborative process, you can, the things you can come up with when you are just get a little more creative or a little bit more free to just play with your friends, and how you can push the boundaries of things a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Caroline?
I don't know, rubbish at this. I would say probably that, it's definitely the team, and it's the team that you've got around you. So like Doug was saying about the trust with everybody is so important, but then also finding that trust within yourself of what you can bring to the table, and I think this was a really sort of safe space because we've all made our own films separately, so you learn from those sort of experiences, but then everyone bringing their own unique sort of take on things, or their own ideas, their own expertise. It was really just sort of, there is a word for it, I don't know what it is, but there's a word where all the things come together and go well.
I think I just follow on from that. I mean, and if there are any filmmakers in the audience, this is really what I took from this, is that don't wait around for the ideal circumstance to make your movie, because it doesn't exist. It will never come along, and be waiting your whole life. Look at what you have available to you right now and make that movie. Work within whatever restrictions you have and try and make them benefits, and you'll be really surprised.
Yeah. There's always a way around it. You can figure it out on your feet.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Rob, Douglas, Brenna, Carolyn, Haley, and of course, Jed and Gemma from earlier. You can watch Host on Shudder now, and you can also catch it on the big screen at BFI South Bank in September and October. If you enjoyed this event, please consider donating to the BFI. They are a charity, and their venues have been closed during this period of lockdown. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Anna.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Anna.
Anna. And thanks everyone for coming and watching the film.
Thanks, guys. Happy spookies. Happy spookies.
Spookies.